and he is actually looking to assess the pathway or the approach of these students. It's something that I used to do with my diagnostic ones in the early days. I used to also assess the pathways. It's quite time-consuming, as you can imagine. But I decided in the end that really the level the students were at, this really wasn't what I was trying to teach them. Certainly in crop diagnosis, as opposed to something like vet or medicine, the diagnostic process is perhaps not quite as refined. It's certainly not as stepwise as you get it when you're dealing with humans or animals, where you've just got, say, one species or situation. So for my own assessment, I don't use those pathways, but other people do, and yes, it does take time. This vet exam was about 100 students, and it took a considerable amount of marking effort to go through those pathways. But again, the academic concerned felt that this was the way that you should assess these particular students. So, you got anyone else? I'll just put up the closing slide then. So, what I've done is, I hope I've given you a flavour anyway of assessment and scenario-based learning. As I said, it's a huge, huge area, and I thought, when I go to these sort of presentations, often what I want to see is some real examples that I can take back and think about. So the hope was that you'll get that benefit out of this particular presentation. I've also put some links on there. SBL Interactive, there's a web link to the particular website. There's also a web link, and it's a fairly long web link, but it's to a site that I manage, that I run on the AKO ATRL site, and that's a little community on scenario-based learning. Where I've got a few articles and various things there. Probably not as updated as I would like. I spend a lot of my time supporting scenario-based learning here at Massey, and it's often a little bit difficult to get the time to update these sort of other external websites, but there you are. I just remembered, as I put this up, that Jeffrey wanted to put a survey, a questionnaire up, so maybe I'll pass it over to you, Jeffrey, to do that.
Liz, thanks very much, Terry. And people will still want to talk, so I'll let them do that, because they can certainly still put their hand up and continue the discussion. But while we're doing this, what I might just put up is the survey. So just give me a second. Your screen now is the online survey. There's only a few questions, so it will take you longer to get through that. So we'd really appreciate it if you would fill that out. And I'll continue the discussion with Terry. But if some of you have to go off, I'd just like to say thank you very much, first of all, to Terry for giving up his time to do this presentation and to raise awareness of scenario-based learning and the activities that you can do in there. I think it's given us a lot to think about, both in terms of the scenarios itself, the use of scenarios and how we assess those, but also the relationship between scenario-based learning, case-based learning, problem-based learning. I mean, there's a whole series of things they have to do, and I think it's actually just brought up the idea to me about probably a future webinar where we actually get someone to look at all of those different types of activities, and then perhaps do a bit of an analysis of those, and just mapping out learning activities that the students actually do versus their assessment tasks for the different types of activities, because I think that would be another interesting thing to do. So, Terry, thank you very much for your time. Don't go away, everyone. If you want to stay and ask some more questions, continue the conversation. So I'll hand back to Terry now in case people want to ask you any more things.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And yes, I'm quite happy to stay around a while. If anyone's got any other comments, we can continue the discussion. Keith, did you want to say something?
Sorry, that was a mistake there. I'm just pushing the wrong button. Apologies.
I do that all the time. Kelly.
Thanks, Terry. I've got another question about the average time it takes you to develop your scenario and how you compile all your resources. Do you, with all your branching, how do you put together all your text and images and kind of develop a plan before you start building an SBLI?
Yeah. Well, I found that I've done a number of these scenarios now for my own courses and for other people. And I've found that that planning phase at beginning, before you even start to use the software, is really important. And it is a creative activity, so it's not that easy just to shoehorn it into step A, step B, step C. But I've found that there are actually there are stages to it. And the first stage for me is first of all, finding out what the lesson objectives are and what you actually are trying to do with a scenario that you might envisage, where it's going to sit, how you're going to assess it, what part of the course is it going to be in, is it going to be played in teams, how long do you expect students to take going through a scenario? Is it going to be split into several scenarios? So there's a lot of questions like that, I think, that need to be thought about before you sort of go any further. And then what I tend to do is storyboard it out, so on a whiteboard, where you're looking at the various pathways and the various things that you want students to look at or go to, what prerequisites might be there, what things you're going to block for them. So I end up with a huge whiteboard that looks pretty messy usually by the time I've finished. But essentially just mapping it out and using that as a type of mind map or template to start the scenario. And after I've sort of cemented the artifacts I want in there, I'll sit down and I tend to construct the scenarios just using tables and Word, where I'll have a table that will correspond to a particular action in the scenario, and I've got headings like prerequisites, and I list any of the images or any resources that I want to include in that action. I put the text in there, and so at the end of it, you end up with this this document, which essentially is a number of tables. Then I can just cut and paste the text or some of these things into the scenario itself. Usually after I've done the mapping, and I'm happy with that, I'll sit down and I'll just do a skeleton. Scenario within SBL Interactive. So just having placeholder images, placeholder text, and just to see if the flow, works for me. So is that helpful? One other thing that I do is at the end of it, when I think I've got a reasonably good scenario, is to show a few people. And I also try and show a few students too, but making sure they understand how it fits in the lesson. Because one thing I've found that's fairly important is that if you're getting someone to look at the scenario and perhaps give you some feedback or to assess it, it's very important that they know how it's being used in the lesson, because they're seeing it out of context. So some things that might not make sense to them, or they may say, "Oh, it's too long," or then they're not quite sure what you're trying to do. Because they're seeing it out of context, it can be difficult for third parties to assess it. So anyone else got any